Hey, friends! Just so you know, we enjoy the swear word and we rely on good old fashioned humor to get through some seriously dark subject matter. At no time do we intend any disrespect toward the victims or families of the victims in the cases we cover. Also, be sure to listen to the end for a few palate cleansing bloopers to reset your mindset. And with that, we thank you for listening and we hope you enjoy. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Crime Will Tell. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Jamie.
James. Our case today, some serious twists and turns. Twistsies and turnsies. It's
Okay.
so goddamn sad. It's completely fucking senseless. But it's like a movie. Like it's like a script to a movie where people are be like, this is a little far-fetched. Nope, this is real life.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit. Okay.
Yeah. And so to lift my spirits, I'm trying a new bourbon today.
What are you drinking?
We're not sponsored, but today I just opened a fresh new bottle of Jefferson's Reserve.
Oh, I have not heard of that.
It's a very old Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey from a very small batch.
Oh,
So, cheers.
cheers to you. I'm rocking my Basil Hayden's, my favorite.
Clink. Mm. Anywho's all. So to lift my spirits, because this is just a crazy case. And I mean, all our cases are sad, but when we research our cases, we really dump ourselves into them. And it's very, very sad when you hear about somebody losing their life. It's senseless. It's just fucking senseless.
Yeah.
For all our Canadian listeners, especially those of you in Edmonton, this case is for you. So this case is situated in Canada, and it's about the 2015 murder of a young man by the name of Dwayne Demkiw.
Okay.
Yeah. According to an Edmonton Journal article written by Madeline Cummings dated Saturday, July 11th, 2015, when police notified Eugene Demkiw in the early afternoon hours of May 31st that his son Dwayne's car was found on fire in Calgary, some 6 hours away from where he and Dwayne's mother Angeline lived in Saskatoon, and a bit shy of 3 hours away from where Dwayne lived in Edmonton, he thought it was a prank. Eugene's like, "What? You found my son's car on fire in Calgary?" Um,
Yeah,
I
that's a
don't know
fucked up
about
call
that.
to get.
But
Yeah.
thank you, authorities, for letting me know.
Yeah. All right.
Dateline, one of my all-time favorite investigative journalism shows and podcasts, they have an episode titled "The Case of the Man with No Name," and it is fan-freaking-tastic. It's about this case. They conducted some serious, as always, excellent investigative reporting. And can I just shout out to two of my favorite investigative journalists, Andrea Canning and Josh Minkowitz? I
Yeah.
seriously crush so hard on both of them anytime they report a case. I love them so much. They are so good. This case wasn't one of theirs. It was Mr. Keith Morrison.
Oh.
But
Oh. Hmm.
I got a lot of really great information from this episode specific to the investigation. There was a lot of articles and newspaper articles and things like that out there about this case, but it's about Dwayne missing and then what happens after. And there's nothing about the actual police investigation, which was fascinating because, again, this is a little bit like a movie script. So
Okay.
I took a whole bunch of information from that episode. So if anybody's interested, it's the case of the man with no name.
Okay.
And that
Also,
is
can we
poignant.
talk about how you just glossed over my Keith Morrison impression?
Did you do a Keith Moore? I was so crushing on Andrea Canning and Josh Mankiewicz. I completely didn't even hear you. What do
You
it again. Do
you
it again.
said you said Keith Morrison. I was going, oh, mm."
That's a
you
really
just
good. Yeah.
you just kept going.
Oh
I'm like,
well, my.
or was it?
Oh, Keith. Dateline did a great job doing investigative. I mean, they talk to, what they do. They're just really good at
Oh, for
this.
sure. Yeah.
So in this episode, we learn that a man was walking by a parking garage in Calgary at the very same time that there was a loud explosion. And this
Shit.
man is like, what the fuck? And so what did he do? He did what everybody does these days, and he immediately took out his cell phone. And he started recording.
Of
He's like,
course.
what in the fuck is going on up in here? I would like to know. I'm going to go ahead and get this shit on video.
Yeah, I'm going to document it.
I'm going to document it. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And what he captured was a man like fast walking, slightly running, that kind of thing. Like when you're at the pool and you're trying to get to the diving board and the lifeguard says,
Mm-hmm.
no running. And you're like, I'm not. It was that kind of running.
Okay.
From the parking garage. So this guy was like hurriedly walking from the parking garage, and it appeared from a car, an Acura, that was on fire inside,
Oh, shit. Okay.
which was what the loud explosion came from. And so naturally, the police and fire department were notified, which is when they learned that the registered owner was Dwayne Demkiw, who, like I said, lived about 3 hours away in Edmonton. So the car was found in Calgary, and about 3 hours away is where the registered owner, Dwayne Demkiw, lived.
Okay.
And this is how, on that early afternoon, Dwayne's parents found police on their doorstep.
Mm.
So, like I said, Eugene, Dwayne's dad, was like, okay, thank you for letting me know. Odd, but there's got to be a logical explanation behind this. This is probably a prank. But when Dwayne's parents hadn't heard from him by late that afternoon, the horrible sinking feeling that this isn't a prank, that started to settle in. And it was because the Demkiws, they were close.
Mm.
They were a close-knit family. They talked regularly by phone and text. Not hearing from Dwayne all day, absolutely unusual.
Shit.
So their
Okay.
spidey senses were starting to go up, coupled with the fact that Dwayne's car became a bit of a barbecue, left them with a feeling of growing dread.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
they're like, fuck, maybe there is something to this barbecue. All right. So a little bit about Dwayne. Dwayne was born July 7th, 1972. He spent his childhood years first in North Battlefield, Canada. Nope, North Battleford. Don't come after me, Canada. Sorry, North Battleford, Canada.
Okay.
And then later, he had moved to Saskatoon, which is where his parents, Eugene and Angeline, still live to this day. He eventually moved to Edmonton, which is in Alberta, Canada, when he was in his late 20s. So he's a Canadian born and raised. In a The U.S. Sun article written by Alexandra Chomick, dated November 3rd, 2023, Dwayne's brother Darren shared that his brother was, quote, an avid scuba diver who worked multiple jobs to help support his hobby and the traveling it required.
Mm.
So basically, Dwayne loved to scuba dive so much that he would take a couple of months off at a time, and he would go travel to places where scuba diving was the bee's knees, and he would actually teach scuba diving lessons.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it was like his side hustle that he spent way more on than what he earned from teaching it, but he loved it so much. So Dwayne worked as a DJ at clubs in the Edmonton area. He also worked as a truck driver for FedEx, and he worked as a limo driver for a company called Revolution Entertainment.
Damn.
Revolution Entertainment will come back.
Ooh. Okay.
On Friday, May 30th, 2015, Dwayne's 42 years old. Dwayne had, by all accounts, a very great day that day. He was planning a trip to Disney World. And so records show that he spent quite a few hours that day on his computer doing serious fucking research in preparation for the perfect magical vacation. Side note, if anybody has ever gone to Disney, it takes a massive amount of research and preparation. In my opinion, it's overwhelming because there's
Yeah.
so much to choose from and so many different packages. And I'm not a fan of Disney World because
Me either.
kids.
But if you get to scuba dive with Goofy, fuck yeah. I bet that was on his list.
I'm trying to mental image Goofy scuba diving.
And he's like, goop, goop, goop.
Precisely. So needless to say, Dwayne was spending a lot of time planning the perfect vacation. He was also the father of 2 boys. And so it was suspected that he was actually putting together a Disney World vacation for his kids, for his 2
Aw.
boys. Later that same day, Dwayne went to a downtown Edmonton restaurant. So we're still on Friday, May 30th, 2015. He went to a downtown Edmonton restaurant to celebrate a close friend's birthday, Kalia Polyhronopoulos.
Whoa.
I spent a lot of time learning how to pronounce her name correctly.
Okay. Good job.
Polyhronopoulos. The last photo ever taken of Dwayne was at Kalia's birthday party, the evening of Friday, May 30th, 2015.
Gotcha. Okay.
Dwayne left Kalia's party early because he had to go work a shift driving a limo, actually a limo bus, so one of them big mamma jammas, for a bachelor party. He told Kalia, hey, I'm going to go do this shift. It's going to be a while, but I'll actually come back to your party after the shift is over in the wee hours of the morning because they're going to be partying. But he never did. He never showed back up. That evening, he was booked to drive a 15-man bachelor party all about Edmonton. So they could celebrate the groom-to-be and, your general shenanigans and hijinks for 15 guys, though. That's a big-ass bachelor party, isn't it? It seems big to me.
Yeah, that seems like a lot.
So here's where we start to get to understand a little bit about the kind of person Dwayne was. Dwayne was a cool-ass guy, and he was super thoughtful, and he was super engaged, and he was invested in. And if he was going to do something, he was going to do it right. And without being asked, he had even arranged for an exotic dancer, Shannon Kunz, who he knew because they worked in adjacent industries. He had arranged for her to join the men on the limo bus for the evening.
Okay.
Obviously, that was a big hit.
I imagine so. Yeah.
Yes. And Shannon shared with CBC reporters that she knew Dwayne to be, quote, easygoing and friendly. So she just always thought he was just a lovely human being. She said, quote, never seen him in a bad mood. He was always calm, always kind. He was kind of a happy-go-lucky guy.
I love it.
And this is how most people would describe him. What you hear a lot was that he laughed. He just laughed all the time. He was always in a good mood.
Aw.
It was just like super cool to be around. He was just one of the nicest, most down to earth guys they knew in their friend circle. He was just like like always in a good mood. So you could always rely on him to just be like, you knew what to expect. He wasn't like moody, like, oh, what am I going to get today? None of that. He was just like cool, chill as a cucumber.
Right. And I love when people laugh a lot, like it's usually pretty contagious and it can like change the mood of a room so quickly. Like I bet that he just had that effect on people.
That positive energy, that positive vibe. And he maintained close relationships with his family and friends because he truly cared. So he was really literally invested in those that he cared about. I think that's what makes this even more sad because he truly was a bright light to everybody. So Dwayne was supposed to go back to Kalia's birthday party. He never did. Kalia didn't really think much of it. She was like, he probably ran late. He was probably exhausted. He probably went home and went to bed. That didn't happen. So now we've got the barbecue. Now nobody can get hold of Dwayne. Now people are starting to like freak out because he's very close. He's never not in contact. He never doesn't return texts and phone calls. He's not. So one of Dwayne's friends, Darren Bavar, he learned what was going on from one of Dwayne's cousins, because, everybody knows everybody and he's got a tight knit group of friends. She told Darren, there's a lot of d names. She told Darren that Dwayne never came home that night from his limo shift.
Yeah.
Well, Darren knew that Dwayne worked for Revolution Entertainment. So fancying himself an armchair detective, which I would do exactly the same thing. He looked up the address of Revolution and he realized, oh, that's just right around the corner from where I live. Okay.
Oh, shit.
By the way, Darren's nickname was the Cowboy because he was a rodeo rider.
Oh.
So Darren was a badass. Darren was a super nice badass.
I love that they've got like a bull rider and a scuba diver and like just these adventurous.
We're building the script for the movie.
Right, exactly.
So Darren hopped on down to Revolution to have himself a look around, and he took a lot of photos. He took photos of license plates of cars that were in the parking lot. He took photos of the actual vehicles. He took photos of just the parking lot in general. He surveyed the ground. So he was being an amateur detective because he wanted to see, how can I help? I want to find Dwayne. My friend is clearly missing. No one's talked to him. What's going on? I got to find him.
Right.
Well, as he was doing this, he noticed a black ball cap and a sheath, like a knife sheath,
Mm-hmm.
laying in a planter.
Okay.
So he immediately ran over and picked up both items, turning them over in his hands, scrutinizing, putting his fingerprints all over them. Psh, no, he didn't. Darren is a badass. He's a fucking rodeo rider.
Yeah.
He's an amateur detective. He didn't touch a fucking thing. He was
Okay.
like, "Oh shit.
Good job, Darren.
This could be potential evidence." So of course he wasn't going to fuck up that. So he made sure not to disturb them in any way. Instead, he took photos from several different angles of the ball cap and the sheath so that detectives could see exactly how they were found, exactly how they were laying, how big they were. He liked it, you know what I mean? Like the whole
Yeah.
total, like, is this bigger than a shoe kind of thing? Then what he did was he put on gloves and he carefully picked
Darren.
up each item and put them in a separate plastic bag that he had grabbed from his truck. And then he provided the evidence to authorities.
Oh my God,
And
I
he was
love
like,
it.
"Hey, and by the way, here are all of the pictures that I took. So I don't know if this is relevant, but Dwayne's clearly missing. And so let's, whatever, let's do this." Meanwhile, Kalia, she's also like, "I'm not going to just sit around." I mean, Dwayne's friends fucking loved him.
Right?
She's like, "I
I
want to help figure out what happened to Dwayne." So what she did was she pulled together a group of friends and they put up flyers. They fucking put up billboards. They called everyone they could think of, trying to figure out, where was Dwayne's last movement? Where could he have possibly have gone after he dropped the limo off that evening? They just wanted to figure out what the fuck was going on and where Dwayne was. They
yeah.
even went over to the limo garage themselves. So over to Revolution Entertainment. They went over there to scout around, look around, see if they could find anything suspicious. She was, in the Dateline episode, she was like, "We didn't know what we were looking for. We were just looking. We just wanted to
Yeah.
figure out if we could find a thread to pull on where Dwayne was." They had a good idea though. They got their hands on Dwayne's iPad. They just wanted to be like, was he meeting someone? Like they just were looking for anything. And they were actually able to see the last place where his cell phone pinged,
Okay.
because I guess he had his cell phone and his iPad linked in that Find My feature. You could like find my item or find my phone or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
The last place that it pinged was about 5 miles from the limo garage, Revolution
Okay.
Entertainment limo garage. And so off they went. They went scouring that area for any clues, evidence, anything suspicious. Unfortunately, they came up empty. Unfortunately, they came up empty-handed. But and the Find My, it's like accurate within a certain range or whatever.
Right.
But
Yeah.
they didn't find anything. But they're in it to win it. They want to understand what is going on. Where is my fucking friend?
Right.
By June 4th, 4 days after Dwayne's disappearance, the police knew their case of a missing person was likely starting to head toward the path of foul play.
Mm.
So they called in reinforcements in the names of Brian Robertson, who was the lead homicide detective in Edmonton, and Detective Rob Billoway to assist in their investigation.
Okay.
So it transferred basically from missing persons units to the homicide detective unit.
Okay.
And what I think is really, really cool here is that while right now, at this point in time, on June 4th, 2015, there wasn't a scrap of evidence yet suggesting that Dwayne had been murdered,
Right.
but their gut feeling was that some fucking foul play and harm had come his way.
Yeah.
And so they were like, "You know what? Nope, we don't have evidence to suggest that, but my gut, my spidey senses, my expertise as a homicide detective, it's telling me there's some shit going down." And they treated this case as if it was a murder. And so they started to
Good.
investigate it as a homicide, and they investigated it as if Dwayne was their own family member. Huge, huge
Aw.
kudos to the Edmonton Police Department. I just was super impressed and stoked with the investigation and how Robertson and Billoway just like poured themselves into this. So, what Robertson and Billoway did was they started from the beginning. And they tracked down that cell phone video that bystander that was walking by and heard the explosion.
Mm.
So they tracked down that cell phone video of the man running from the parking garage at the time of the explosion. And what police could see in the video was that as the man was like running away, he was looking behind him back at the parking garage as he was running away. So clearly there was a connection between the barbecue and the mystery man. The
Right.
explosion, the barbecue, the parking garage, the mystery man, they're connected somehow because of his behavior.
Right.
And the bystander who took the video told detectives, yeah, I was literally standing right out there filming him, and I was concerned that he was going to see me because I was right out in the open. And so I kind of put my phone down. So after a while, the video just kind of goes to like the guy's pant leg or whatever. But
Mhm.
he said, hey, but what I saw was this guy, he was holding a license plate. He was holding a license plate, and then he ducked behind a dumpster, and then he took his shirt off and he wrapped this license plate up in his shirt, and then he just like walked off.
Oh,
And
damn.
the police are like, oh yeah, that's not sketch at all.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, totally normal behavior. So it was awesome that this guy had the video. Bummer that the video wasn't clear enough though to get an identification of the
Mm.
guy that wrapped the license plate and walked out of frame.
Right.
So the police are like, all right, well, let's turn our attention to the barbecue. And as they were processing it for evidence, they realized that whoever set this fire, if it was the man in the cell phone video, probably, clearly didn't know much about how fire works. Because you know how fire requires oxygen to grow and proliferate and
Mhm.
become bigger?
Yeah.
Well, the fire was set in the trunk of the car.
Mm.
Okay, you could set it in the trunk of the car.
Yeah.
That's cool.
If you leave
But
the
then
trunk
whoever
open.
said it, exactly.
Mhm.
Kaplunk, there goes the trunk lid, and now poof, there goes the oxygen source. And so while the fire kind of went crazy for a little bit, it was super contained to the trunk, and it really didn't cause much damage at all, which was a really lucky break for investigators because the fire did not cause damage to the inside of the car.
Oh, okay.
So
Good.
they're like, okay, we got some forensic work to do now.
Holla.
So there were a lot of papers and what I'll call like junk and stuff in the car. So just
Okay.
picture a car that like Dwayne just threw shit in the car and like didn't really clean it out. So
Yeah.
basically most people's cars,
Yeah. Yeah.
not my car, but most people's cars. And so while that was a lucky break for investigators because none of it was damaged, Robertson and Billaway, they were like, fuck, how do we know what if this is truly junk and stuff and what is evidence? Like, how
Right.
do we know what's going to be
Mm.
useful in finding Dwayne and what's just,
Shit
a
in this car.
fucking piece of, telemarketing mail?
Yeah.
What they did find, though, which was probably at first the most interesting detail, was there was blood on the back seat.
Oh, it's never good.
At the time, though, they were like, okay, so is this blood from a nasty cut on your hand, or is this blood that you wouldn't have survived? So they were trying to understand
Mm.
like how much blood, because blood soaks in. So what they were seeing was they're like, is this all the blood or is there blood everywhere? Kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
When they used luminol to determine just how much blood there was, detectives described that there was so much luminescence that you could literally see it from fucking space. It
Oh,
just
Jesus.
glowed. And they were like, okay. They concluded with that much blood, whosever blood this was likely did not survive.
Damn.
There was so much blood. Uh, Otherwise, as they processed the car for for forensic evidence, it was wiped clean. So clean that it was unusually clean. So clean that somebody went to great lengths to wipe it down.
Right. Especially with the amount of clutter in the car, you would assume that that thing would be not cleaned.
Exactly. That's what the investigators said. They were like, with the state of the car, we were expecting to see all kinds of um, fingerprints and evidence, especially from Dwayne, because it was his car.
For sure.
Nada, nothing.
Really?
Yeah, it
Oy.
was unusually clean. In their search through the car's contents, they did find a document that had a name on it. And the name was Angel Shalafu.
Oh.
And they were like, okay, so who is this lovely angel?
Mm-hmm.
Let's look into her story and how does she know Dwayne? And when they did, they learned that the missing persons unit had already questioned Angel right before detectives Robertson and Billoway were assigned to the case. And they pulled up the video of her interview so that they could see what they learned. And they settled in and they're like, okay, let's figure out what she has to say. And what they learned was that Angel knew Dwayne very well. In fact, they had lived together for about 8 years
Oh, shit.
in a romantic relationship. So they were
Ah.
considered common law husband and wife because they had lived together for so long. But their relationship had ended, right? They were no longer romantically linked, but they maintained a pretty strong friendship, basically talking like 4 to 5 times a week, every
Mm.
week. They were
Okay.
really, really close, good friends. I fucking love this. So this gets back to like how amazing Dwayne is. We often hear how amazing victims are. Like we hear this all the time, but we're
Right.
all
Yeah.
human. None of us are perfect. We all fuck up and we all do stupid shit. James, I think you even said in one of our earlier episodes that it seems like most victims, I think you were like, light up a fucking room, is what you
Mhm.
said. So while I'm sure Dwayne was just as human as the next guy, it's obvious that what his friends and family have to say about him is absolutely true. He was truly a fucking gem. To be in a romantic relationship with someone, to live with them for years, and for that to end and still be solidly great friends that you actually are involved in each other's day to day lives. Well, I think that says a shit ton about Dwayne's character and Angel's too.
Mhm.
I don't know that that's a regular thing. During Angel's interview, she shared with detectives that she and Dwayne were still so close that, in fact, it made the guy she used to date recently pretty fucking jealous. And so naturally, Robertson and Billoway are like, they perked up. They're like,
Red
what?
flag.
Her ex's name was Robert Aubrey Maxwell, and he did not approve of their friendship. And he seriously disliked Dwayne because he was an ex boyfriend of Angel's and she still talked to him.
Yeah.
He wasn't down with that. Dwayne didn't like Robert either. And Dwayne often told Angel, look, he is bad news. You need to get rid of him. You need to dump his ass. I'm worried about you every time you spend time with him.
Yeah, he's just looking out for her.
When Angel was asked during her interview to describe Maxwell, she was like, I'll do you one better. And she showed them a video of Maxwell, who is a big guy. And as they were asked this, the interviewer was asking questions like, "Oh, is he wearing a North Face jacket? Oh, is that?" And Angel was like, "Yeah, he has a North Face jacket and he also has a North Face hat." And they were like, "Oh, does he now?
Really?
Okay."
Hmm.
And just like that, the hat that Darren Bavar found sitting outside in that planter of the Revolution Entertainment limo garage was like, "Okay, let's get that fucking thing off to DNA lab and get that tested."
Right?
But so here's the deal. I'm like, there are so many people that have North Face hats. My
True that.
entire family has multiple North Face hats.
Mhm.
So I'm like, so maybe this hat was Maxwell's, maybe it wasn't, but it was really good for them to get it off to the DNA lab, figure out what the DNA is, if they have a suspect in the future that they can link it to. So while they started the DNA results waiting game, they decided to bring Angel back for a second interview. Only this time, Detective Billoway showed her the cell phone video that bystander took the morning of the explosion in the barbecue. And he asked her, "Hey, do you recognize this guy that's like run walking from the parking garage?" And Angel was like, "Oh man, I really fucking hope I'm wrong. But if I were like out there, I'd be like, "Oh, hey, Robert, how's it going?" She was pretty
Shit.
certain. And Billoway was like, "Okay, so on a scale of 0 to 10, like how certain are you?" And she's like, "An 8." She's pretty
Damn.
certain.
Yeah,
So
that's
now detectives were
whew.
like, "Okay, we got to find this Robert Aubrey Maxwell." Robert Aubrey Maxwell was in the wind.
Of course he was.
Yeah. So they're like, "God damn it. All right." So while they keep their ears to the ground for Maxwell to show up or whatever, they themselves go to the Revolution limo garage and they basically start from ground zero. And what they're doing is they're looking for the knife that belongs to the sheath that Darren Bavar found with the hat. They're like,
Okay.
where there's a sheath, let there be a knife. But they didn't find a knife. There
Hmm.
was no knife. And so then they're like, okay, there's video cameras around here. So let's take a look at the security camera footage and the surveillance video and see what we can find. They found a motion-activated camera that surveils the outside area and it overlooks the parking lot.
Okay.
And as they were reviewing the footage, I mean, these guys, Robertson and Billett, I mean, they spent hours reviewing video footage. And as they were reviewing the footage the night of Dwayne's disappearance, they saw the camera come to life due to a guy walking through the camera frame at about 11 p.m.
Okay.
Then they saw the guy come back through the frame, open up the lid to the dumpster that was right in the camera's view, and crawled inside and shut the lid.
What the fuck?
And then that's it. Then the camera went dormant. And then the camera activated a couple of more times after that. And this was because whoever was hiding inside the dumpster, they had raised the lid a little bit, like up like 6 inches or so to like pop their eyes up to like look out and like see what, like see if they could see anything.
Oh my
And then
God.
they would shut the lid. So somebody was clearly lying in wait.
Oscar the fucking Grouch.
And so Robertson and Billoway were like, okay, this has got to be related because that's fucking suspicious as hell.
Creepy and weird.
Mm-hmm. So what we learn is that after the bachelor party ended, Dwayne gave Shannon Kuntz, remember the exotic dancer that he had arranged? He gave her a ride back to her car, dropped her off at around 2 a.m. and made sure that she got on the road safely. Because again, Dwayne was a fucking gem. Records show he texted his roommate, Brian Ballandine, around 2:48 to 2:55 a.m. Surveillance camera footage shows inside the limo garage, Dwayne driving the limo into the garage bay. This was around 2:50 a.m. So he's like dropping Shannon off. He drives back to the limo garage. He pulls in. He's texting his roommate, Brian, and he starts cleaning the limo. Because that's what you do. You go and you do a gig and you come home, or excuse me, you come back to the limo garage, you clean the limo so it's ready for the next gig.
Right.
And then, and again, he like took his time. He didn't just like half-ass this shit. And when he was done cleaning the limo, before turning the lights off and walking out the door, he punched in the code to activate the limo garage's security system. This was at about 4 a.m.
Okay.
When he walked out the door, detectives were expecting to see an altercation between Dwayne and whoever was hiding in the dumpster, because the door he walked out was in the back by that dumpster into that parking lot. Okay. So they were expecting the guy to be like, coming, popping out of the dumpster.
Yeah.
Except the camera didn't activate. Remember, it's a motion sensor camera. It did not activate, which was odd because Dwayne walked out of the doorway. So at the very least, the camera should have activated because Dwayne walked out into the parking lot.
Right, yeah.
Well, the detectives were like, what the fuck? What happened? Why did the camera not activate? What they think occurred was that around that time, shortly before 4 a.m., a pretty powerful thunderstorm had rolled through the area and had knocked power out in some parts of the city. And they believe that the garage was impacted for a short time before the power was restored. And it just so happened to be at the very same moment that Dwayne walked out into the parking lot. So they had no fucking footage of anything about whatever happened after the inside bay, garage bay cameras caught him walking out the door.
Oh my God. That is some shit luck.
Again, wouldn't you think in a movie script that was far-fetched?
Yes. I'd be like, no way. No. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, but it's real life. So Robertson and Billow were like, God damn it. And unfortunately, Dwayne walking out the door, that's the last time Dwayne was ever seen alive on video. Last picture was taken at Callie's birthday party. Last video of him was him walking out that garage bay door. So detectives turn their attention to finding out as much as they can about Maxwell. Not Waxwell, Maxwell. And what they learn is that he's basically a fucking ghost. No one knows much, if anything, about him. No one knew where he lived. No one knew if he had a family. He was self-employed as the owner of a glass business that operated out of a storage unit. So it didn't even have like a building. Even Angel, who knew him for close to 2 years, dated him, didn't really know anything about him. He never talked about where he grew up. He never talked about whether or not his mom and dad were still alive, if he had siblings. He never talked about what his childhood was like. Nothing. He had no online social media presence. He never allowed anyone to go to his home. He was extraordinarily and unusually private. He was basically a ghost. But Maxwell did have a legitimate, legal Canadian driver's license with his photo on it and his name, Robert Aubrey Maxwell. He had a Canadian passport, which, like the United States, is very difficult to get. And
Okay.
he had a social insurance number, which I take to be similar to United States social security numbers.
Okay.
So detectives knew who Maxwell was. They knew he was legit. They knew he existed, but they didn't know him at all at the same time. Like they knew him, but they didn't because he was
Right.
so fucking private. But what they do learn is that he's goddamn creepy. So
Cool.
Kalia, Darren, Angel, Dwayne, they all hung out together as part of like a bigger group of friends that were pretty tight knit. And they had all met Maxwell because he and Angel were dating. And Maxwell generally gave everybody the fucking creeps. Everybody was like, ew, his
Yeah.
vibe is all wrong. He's got to go.
Did he have weird sideburns?
No,
Okay.
he didn't. At least in the pictures that I've seen, he did not.
Okay.
By now, while everyone still tried to hold out hope that Dwayne was still alive, with all the blood that was found in the backseat of the car, chances were pretty good that it was probably Dwayne's blood, it was Dwayne's car, and that he was
Yeah.
probably dead. So everybody, all his friends, his family, they were really starting to try to grapple with the likely reality that Dwayne's never coming back. Like, that's it. He's gone. And detectives, they were still on the hunt for Maxwell. Maxwell was in the wind, and they're like, where the fuck is this guy? So they next pulled a records report on Maxwell, and they learned that he had been previously arrested for assault. And the assault charge was serious enough in Canada that it caused his DNA to be put on file.
Oh, excellent.
Awesome. So now they just needed to wait for the results of the DNA test on the North Face hat and the sheath that were found outside the limo garage. They're like, all right. So detectives were absolutely convinced that the hat and the sheath would link Maxwell to the case. It would
Right.
link Maxwell directly to Dwayne's disappearance. And they needed to find Maxwell. So they put a flag on his vehicle. The flag in Canada, what this means is if any law enforcement agency were to run the plates, detectives would get notified. Detectives Robertson and Billaway would get notified. So they put a flag
Okay.
in the like the national system, and they would get notified if that truck popped for any
Okay.
reason. And records showed that this truck that Maxwell drove was a white GMC pickup truck.
Okay.
Okay. So 2 weeks later, boomsy, they got an alert.
It popped.
It popped. The truck had been spotted in Vancouver. There were about 3 days worth of parking tickets on it, and the passenger window was partially rolled down, and the keys were in the ignition, and there was a brand new cell phone sitting in the front of the truck. And it was very clear that not only did Maxwell abandon this truck, he was really fucking hoping someone would steal it. He
Right.
basically put a sign on it in gold-plated lettering that said, "Please steal me."
Yeah.
And detectives were like, "How the fuck did this truck not get stolen?"
Yeah, no
And
shit.
then they started thinking through it, and they're like, it was so goddamn obvious that people thought it was a bait truck. They're like,
Oh,
we're
yeah.
convinced people thought this is a bait truck and they're trying to do like Grand Theft Auto stings or whatever the fuck the cops are trying to do, or I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole. So there it
Wow.
sat 3 days later, and it got flagged in the system. And when the forensics team, they like descended on it, and when they processed the truck, it was wiped clean, just like Dwayne's car was. So
Of
they're like,
course.
okay, so that's definitely a fucking link because it was
Mhm.
unnaturally clean. Like in between all the little seams that the forensic team likes to get into because people forget. Nope.
Yeah.
Clean, 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 clean.
Ugh.
Cleaner than it came off the manufacturing line clean.
Yikes.
So there wasn't any DNA. There weren't any fingerprints. There was literally nothing to lift. The forensic team struck out. But they did find a few items in the bed of the truck. They found a fork, like a plastic fork,
Okay.
a chewed up piece of gum, and a boat trailer.
What?
And while they weren't sure if these items had been chucked in there by like passersby, they did send the fork and the gum to the DNA lab for processing just in case. Because they were thinking, if somebody's driving with pickup trucks, I don't know if you've never driven a truck, you may not know this phenomenon, but when you're driving with a pickup truck and you roll your window down and you chuck something out, oftentimes the way that the wind is going by the truck, it'll whip it right into the bed of the truck.
Yeah.
And they were hoping that whoever drove the truck, it was that person's chewing gum who threw it out the window and it
Right.
came
Just
swooping right back
came
into the
back
bed.
in.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So they sent those off to the DNA lab for processing just in case. They had also found that small boat trailer. Now, it's called a boat trailer.
Yeah. I need you to explain this because
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And so I'm going to clear that up because I immediately was like, how the fuck did somebody fit a boat trailer in the bed of a truck? That
Was
is
it for a
that's
kayak
yeah,
or?
that's not a thing. That doesn't
Mhm.
fit. It's not an actual boat trailer. It's just called a boat trailer, and I'll explain. So, they found this boat trailer, so they decided to run the registration on it to see what name it was registered to, expecting it to be Maxwell, but it wasn't Maxwell. It actually was registered to someone that lived in the suburb of Vancouver, some rando
Oh.
guy. And when detectives contacted him and asked him, why the fuck is your boat trailer sitting in the back of an abandoned truck that's registered to a guy that's in the wind and we're hunting him for potential murder? Like,
Yeah.
who are you, sir? And how are you connected here? And
Right.
he was like, well, this guy answered an ad for a jet ski I was selling. So this boat
Okay.
trailer was a jet ski trailer. That's why
Gotcha.
it could fit in the bed
Okay.
of the truck. He's like, yeah,
Aha.
I'm selling my jet ski. And so I put an ad out, and this guy answered the ad. And when he described the guy to detectives, his description matched that of Maxwell. So the detectives were like, well, tell us about your interaction. And the guy was like, well, he wanted to see if he could give me a little bit of cash and a cell phone. And I said, nah, dude, I just want cash.
Yeah.
And Maxwell was like, oh, okay. And he's like, and also oddly, the only question he had for me about the jet ski was he wanted to know how far it would go on a full tank of gas. He didn't want to know if I've done maintenance on it
Shit.
regularly, how many miles were on it, or how many hours are on it. He didn't want to know if there were any mechanicals. He just wanted to know how far will it go on a full tank of gas.
Oh, fuck.
And the
Okay.
police are like, that's janky.
Yeah.
Hmm. So now detectives were on the hunt to figure out where Maxwell might have gone on this jet ski because he bought it
Right.
from the guy. And the truck and the jet ski trailer are abandoned in this parking lot in Vancouver right next to a waterway.
Mm.
And they realized that it would be pretty easy for Maxwell to get to the United States without going through customs by using the jet ski.
Oh, shit.
Robertson and Billoway were like, okay, fuck. I really don't think he would go to the US. There's nothing to say that he had any connection there. So they searched the coastline because they're wondering maybe he abandoned the jet ski. Maybe I don't know, maybe he went somewhere, but they don't think that he went to the US. And so they didn't find the jet ski abandoned anywhere, but they did run the jet ski's registration number through a national database that Canada has for stolen cars and boats. And they
Okay.
learned that the jet ski, which had been found abandoned near the last stretch of land before you get to the US, had actually been seized a few days earlier by the Delta Police Department in Canada.
Oh, wow.
So now Robertson and Billoway were like, so we were on the right fucking track. He probably did sneak into the United States.
Damn.
6 weeks later, DNA results were finally back on the plastic fork and the chewing gum. The last two items that went in. Like, we don't have it back on the hat and sheath yet,
Yeah, what the fuck?
but the last two items that went in, they finally had the results back. The fork didn't contain any DNA. It was just a clean plastic fork that was back there. But the gum came back as not Maxwell.
What?
It came back as unknown male 1.
Mm. I hate that guy.
It didn't match Maxwell or anyone else in the Canadian National Database. It was unknown male 1. And so the detectives chalked the gum up to a passerby. They're like, somebody just walked by and threw the gum into the bed of the truck. But the DNA results on the North Face ball cap actually ended up coming in a few days later. And
And
shockingly, that DNA did not belong to Maxwell either.
shit.
And even more confusing, the DNA on the North Face hat matched the DNA on the chewing gum. They both
What?
came back to the same unknown male 1.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
So this is when the detectives realized we've got a fucking problem on our hands. They strongly believed Maxwell was their suspect, but none of the DNA results came back to him. But they definitely tied together this unknown fucking dude who was tied to the chewing gum and the abandoned truck, which was Maxwell's truck, and the North Face hat, which was found in the planter at Revolution Limo Garage, the last place that Dwayne was ever seen alive.
Right.
So they're like, Jesus Christ, we've got ourselves a Scooby Doo mystery on our hands. Either
Mhm.
Maxwell isn't their guy, or he had an accomplice, or Maxwell is their guy, but they need to figure out how he's their guy. And is he planting DNA to throw the cops off? Like,
Right. Mm.
what they did believe was whoever the guy was that belonged to the DNA of the hat and the gum was very likely Dwayne's killer. They were like, that thread we believe to be true and factual. Now we just have to figure out how Maxwell fits into all of this. So Robertson and Billoway, you know how like you see on police shows where like they have a standing, like they have a start the day meeting every day and they're talking
Mhm.
about the cases. And so Robertson and Billoway consult with other detectives during their like daily stand up at their bureau, and they tell them the facts and the circumstances of the case. And they're like, tell us what you think. They wanted to get their take on the situation because, eyes and brains that are not like so invested in the details, they can kind of step back and see the forest for the trees.
Right.
And one detective looks at them and says, hey man, how do you know Robert Aubrey Maxwell is really a Robert Aubrey Maxwell? And that's when the detectives were like, oh my fucking God.
Hmm.
That's the goddamn key. They needed to figure out who this Robert Aubrey Maxwell guy really was. They felt like they were chasing the right guy, but with the wrong name.
Right. Oh, fuck.
And so as detectives started investigating Robert Aubrey Maxwell, what they learned was that Maxwell had lived on the streets and shelters of Vancouver, Ontario, and British Columbia and had a serious fucking drug problem. So he was a drug
Ugh.
addict living on the streets and in shelters. And because of this, he was super well known by the police. He was always getting picked up, right?
Mm.
And detectives were able to determine the last time a shelter saw him, the last time that the police dealt with him, and the last time his grandmother talked to him on the phone was September 2012. And basically, after September 2012, Maxwell's timeline ends. Poof, he's gone, like Kaiser Sose. He's gone.
Damn.
In
Okay.
February of
Ugh.
2013, so a few months later, Maxwell's grandmother, she was the one that actually raised him as a child, she reported him missing.
Shit. Okay.
Police working the case, the missing unit, Maxwell's grandmother's missing persons report, they tracked him to what they believed was the last shelter he stayed in. And those people that worked there were like, hey, we haven't seen Maxwell in a while, but the last time that we did see him, he cashed a check from Architectural Glass, a business in Edmonton. So they contacted Architectural Glass and they connected with Maxwell. And they were like, hey, buddy, your grandmother, she's missing you because she put out a missing persons report on you and she's really worried about you. And he was like, yep, I'm fine. I live and work in Edmonton now, and I have intentionally cut ties with my family. I don't want anything to do with them. I don't want any contact with him. I do not want to be considered missing. Can you please take me off the missing persons list? I'm fine. I'm alive and well. I don't want anything to do with my family. And the police were like,
Wow.
well, you're a grown ass adult. You can do whatever the fuck you want. So they canceled their missing persons case and they told his grandmother, and his grandmother was like, okay, well, I guess if that's what he wants. And she accepted it. Now, 2 years later, detectives Robertson and Billoway are trying to sort out who the fuck is who.
Yeah.
Because this guy that they're chasing didn't seem like a guy that lived on the streets and was a drug addict. So they send Maxwell's grandmother Maxwell's most recent driver's license photo, the one that they had, who immediately declared, look, I don't know who this is, but this is not my fucking grandson. This is not a photo of my
Damn.
grandson. So this is
Hmm.
not my Robert Aubrey Maxwell. So the detectives searched for an old arrest or like a booking, they called a booking photo of the quote unquote real Maxwell so that they could compare that photo with the driver's license photo that they have.
Okay.
And when they found one, like an old booking photo, it was extraordinarily evident that those photos did not match.
Okay.
They were two very different people.
Hmm.
And then detectives are like, okay, so now we've confirmed that the real Maxwell isn't the Maxwell that they're chasing, which makes the unknown male 1 DNA make a whole lot more sense.
Exactly, yeah.
They believed that at that point, the fake Maxwell likely killed the real Maxwell and stole his identity.
That's so fucked.
Okay, that's a lot, and it's super twisty and turny. Like, are you with me?
I got it. I got it. And I'm pretty dumb.
So,
So,
so detectives go back to square one because Maxwell, fake Maxwell, is still in the wind. And they don't know who this guy is. So they go back to square one and they start going over all of the evidence that they have again, hoping to glean something they may have missed. And they watch all the interviews with Angel again. And as they were asking her details about her ex boyfriend in one of the interviews, her ex boyfriend being fake Robert Aubrey Maxwell,
mhm.
she shared a detail that they now picked up on.
He had a tramp stamp?
Maxwell had told her that he once spent a little time in Washington State before going to
Ooh,
Vancouver and then making his way to Edmonton.
fuck. Okay.
And Robertson and Billoway perked up at this because you could easily get to Washington State from Vancouver on a jet ski. So they're like, okay. So Robertson had a friend. He's like, hey, friend, you work in Canada's Motor Vehicle Division department. Can you send a photo of Maxwell's driver's license to Washington State's DMV? Because, Washington State only has one DMV. So I don't know which DMV they sent it to, but some at DMV in Washington State. And can you have them run it through their photo recognition software, please? Oh, please. And his friend was like, yeah, dude, I got you. So they
Sure.
sent the photo over to Washington State's DMV, who pushed it through the software program for facial recognition. What Robertson was ultimately after was he wanted to run the DNA of unknown male 1 through the US's CODIS database.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what he wanted. And the FBI was like, yeah, we fucking got you. You guys are nice. We're going to be nice back. But guess what? We need a name because the way that the CODIS database works is you have a name and you have a DNA and the database matches it.
Mm.
So that was the catch-22 quagmire because Robertson was like, I don't have a fucking name. That's what I want
Yeah.
from you. And they're
That's what
like,
we're
well,
trying to
dude,
figure out.
we can't do this unless you give us a name. And he was like, God damn it. No pressure on Washington State. But if you could just go ahead and come through, that'd be great. So eventually, Washington State DMV narrowed down to 25 photos that could have been a reasonable match to the photo of the Canadian driver's license of Maxwell. And the way that the photo recognition software works, and I promise I won't take us down a rabbit hole, but just a quick, it ranks the photos on strength of match from 0 to 1. If it's 0, it doesn't really match. If it's 1, it's considered a strong match. And anywhere in between, right? And of those 25 photos, there was one that ranked a 1. And when you
Shit.
looked at it compared to the driver's license photo of Maxwell, it was a very close match. It was also a very close match to what they could see of the guy in the surveillance footage, even though it was grainy. So they're like, okay. And so that came with a name,
Oh, who?
Jason Stedman.
Jason.
Now that we have a name, the FBI can run the DNA profile of unknown male 1 with the name Jason Stedman through CODIS. And bingo,
There was a hit.
that unknown male 1 DNA was Jason fucking
Jason.
Stedman.
Of course it was.
Turns out Jason Stedman had an ex-wife and a daughter who lived in Washington State.
Oh.
And when his ex-wife, Jennifer Stedman, met him, Jason didn't have a last name. Let me explain. So Jason had legally changed his name from Jason X, whatever his last name was, to Jason. So on his actual Washington State driver's license, his name was Jason.
You can do that?
Apparently. I don't know if you can do it now, but back then
I'll
when
be
he
right
did
back.
it.
I'll be back. I'll be back.
Oh. You literally started taking off your headphones and I was like, all right, yeah, you're going to be, yeah, I'm just going to go to the fucking, go to the court and change my name. So when she met him, he did not have a last name. He fucking changed that shit to Jason, just Jason, like goddamn Cher or Madonna or Sting,
Oh my
just
God.
Jason. And so when he and Jennifer got married, Jennifer's maiden name is Stedman, and he took her last name. That's how he became Jason Stedman. And it'll
Interesting.
become apparent why he did that. So in the Dateline episode, again, the name of that episode is The Case of the Man with No Name. There is a lot of information about Jason and his time with Jennifer. You can find this in newspaper articles too. And the trouble he had gotten into and how unhinged he had become over time. I am not going to go into any of that.
Okay.
I don't want to give any more airtime than necessary to Jason. I don't think it's relevant to the story. Honestly, I don't give a flying fuck about, he had a childhood and he was like, in this case, I don't think it's relevant to the story to like show the buildup. He became unhinged as he was just always that way. So I didn't want to spend any time. This episode is long enough as it fucking is. So I didn't want to spend any time on Jason. But suffice it to say, Jennifer and Jason's, I will say this. Jennifer said that when she first met Jason and they started courting and dating, whatever, he treated her like a fucking queen and like doted on her and was like the most amazing boyfriend anybody could have ever wanted. And then she found out she was pregnant with their daughter. 3 months later, they got married. And it was like, no longer was he treating her like a queen. He basically was after her for her name and anonymity. Because having
Wow.
the appearance of, I'm a family man, I have a wife, I have a daughter, I have a well-paying job. He worked for a union and he was paid well, like completely new identity.
Mm.
So it didn't last long. And it got to the point where he started to, the super domestic violence thread, he started to beat her and he threatened her life. He basically was like, if you ever try to take my daughter away from me, I will fucking kill you. She was just, so suffice it to say, she lived her life in fear for a very long time until suddenly, one day, out of the blue, no explanation, Jason fucking disappeared
Wow.
and he was gone. And that happened in August 2012. And the
Interesting.
real Robert Aubrey Maxwell, his timeline ends September 2012.
Right. Yeah.
So Robertson and Billaway are like, that motherfucker went to Canada. He met Robert Aubrey Maxwell, got a job for him or something because he cashed a check from Architectural Glass, which is Jason Stedman's fucking company in Edmonton. And Jason fucking killed him and stole his identity to set up a new life in Canada. They were
Mm.
convinced that's what happened.
Yeah.
So all this time, Jason has been in the wind. The fake Maxwell, whose real name is Jason, he's been in the wind. And detectives Robertson and Billaway were afraid he'd fled well beyond their jurisdiction. And to go through all the mumbo jumbo and all the fucking red tape was going to be forever, but they were going to try. They weren't going to let up the gas.
Yeah.
In November 2015, ready for another twist? Detective
You know.
Robertson, well, you're going to get it whether you're ready or not.
Okay.
Detective Robertson got a phone call from a U.S. Marshal in Washington State who said, hey, just so you know, Jason Stedman just walked through our doors and turned himself in on an outstanding warrant.
Fuck. Okay.
So one would think, why the fuck is he like walking into law enforcement hands?
Yeah.
And they believed that Jason was trying to pull off his biggest disappearing act ever. So stay with me. The only way to not be Robert Aubrey Maxwell anymore is to become, again, Jason Stedman.
Right.
And if Jason Stedman went back to jail and served out the remaining months of his previous sentence, he'd be out and free and clear because the police would be running around trying to find fucking Robert Aubrey Maxwell. So in order to be Jason Stedman again, he had to clear up his warrant so he could walk out of jail and just fully be Jason Stedman as a free man with nobody looking for him. That was Jason's plan.
Wow.
And he's like,
Ugh.
okay, well, the only way to do that is I got to turn myself in and I have to become Jason Stedman again to no longer
Damn.
be Robert Aubrey Maxwell. Stupid fucking Jason, though, he had no idea that the authorities were full aware he was Jason Stedman and AKA fake Robert Aubrey
Right.
Maxwell.
That
They
they'd
had
made
put
that
those pieces
connection.
exactly. So when he was back in court for his resentencing on his warrant as Jason Stedman, he learned that authorities knew who the fuck he was and what the fuck he had done in Canada. And the U.S. Marshal Kevin Greer, he stood up in court And he advised the judge, hey, just so you know, judge, lots of respect here. This Jason Stedman asshole over here, he's wanted in Canada on first-degree murder charges. Just think you should know.
Yeah, just a heads up.
And Kevin Greer said that when he said this, he kind of looked over at Jason, and Jason just put his head down on the desk and just like shook his head back and forth. He's like, because he knew his gig was up.
Yeah.
He knew it was up. So that was November of 2015. Several months later, and almost a year after Dwayne's disappearance, on April 5th, 2016, a farmer was walking his dog along wooded property that he had near the town of Innisfail, Alberta, Canada. It's situated about 180 kilometers, which is about 110 miles from where Dwayne lived in Edmonton, and he found human bones. DNA analysis confirmed those bones to be that of Dwayne.
Damn.
In a CBC News article dated April 15th, 2016, Dwayne's father, Eugene, was quoted, "Of course, we were always waiting for him to come up the driveway, but I guess it's good that we found him. I would like to thank, I don't know who it is that found the spot. From the bottom of our hearts, my wife and I and the whole family would like to thank them for finding my son." In September 2016, U.S. authorities turned Jason over to the Canadian authorities because he was done serving the rest of his previous sentence against his warrant here in the United States. Okay. So they turned him over to Canadian authorities. And after 3 fucking years of delays and pretrial hearings, et cetera, the court system, Jason's trial finally got underway. And while he pleaded not guilty, declaring, I didn't do this, this wasn't me, the evidence they had was so overwhelming, it was so beyond circumstantial, he basically didn't stand a chance. However, the motive behind why Jason killed Dwayne was a little bit more elusive and fuzzy, because you have to have means, motive, and opportunity, right?
Right, yeah.
And Jason wasn't talking. He did not talk at all to detectives. He did not talk at all to anybody. He basically was like, I want my lawyer. Detectives and prosecutors believed, though, that the motive was as old as time.
Jealousy?
Yep, you got it. They believed that when Angel broke up with Jason, he took his rage out on Dwayne for the simple fact that he had always hated Dwayne for how close he and Angel were after they had ended their long-term relationship. He was super fucking jealous. He regularly bitched at Angel about it, arguing that her close relationship with Dwayne was the only reason why their relationship wasn't able to grow into anything more substantial. And essentially, when Angel broke up with Jason, Jason blamed Dwayne for his failed relationship with Angel. So it was all Dwayne's fault.
Right.
Nothing to do with the fact that Jason's a goddamn tool.
Right.
It came out in court that prosecutors believed that Jason used a fucking machete to kill Dwayne.
Oh my God.
Because that knife sheath that was found with the hat in the planter outside of the Revolution limo garage, when they finally figured out who the fuck Jason was, they searched his house. They found another sheath that was identical to that one, but bigger, and it housed a machete.
Fuck.
And it had a specific name, but the machete they found in his house was the senior version, and the sheath that they found in the planter outside the limo garage was the junior version. So they believed that was the machete that belonged to that sheath that Jason used to kill Dwayne, which would account for all the fucking blood in the car.
Right, yeah. Ugh.
They think that he killed him by head and neck wounds because of the amount of blood. But anyway, they believe that he killed Dwayne with a machete, that he put Dwayne's body in the backseat of his own goddamn car. That's just offensive. And then later he dumped Dwayne's car in the parking garage after dumping his body in Innisfail, Alberta. He took the car to the parking garage, which was in Calgary, and then he set it on fire, hoping to destroy evidence, except he doesn't know how fucking fire works.
Right.
Jason was ultimately found guilty and convicted of first-degree murder for Dwayne's murder, and was also found guilty of arson for trying to turn Dwayne's Acura into a well-done barbecue. And in February of 2019, he was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years, which is the maximum under Canadian law. And he showed No, zero emotion or remorse at his sentencing. Just fucking nothing. Nothing. 7 years after Dwayne's death, in a Star Phoenix newspaper article dated July 7th, 2022, so Dwayne's birthday, Dwayne's mom, dad, and sons took out a small spot for an in-loving memory of tribute to Dwayne on his 50th birthday.
Aww.
They loved him so much. They still do. And that is just the sad and tragic case of the murder of Dwayne Demkiw.
Oh, man. Yeah, that is heartbreaking.
Yeah, that was a ride. I was like, what the fuck?
Well, and also the murder of likely...
Oh, Robert Aubrey Maxwell. Actually, yes, thank you for reminding me, because what I meant to say is, remember earlier in the episode when I said that the detectives really treated this case as if Dwayne was a member of their own family and that they would like sort of expand. Well, when they realized that Jason absolutely likely killed Robert Aubrey Maxwell to steal his identity, they widened their investigation to include searching for Robert Aubrey Maxwell's body.
Okay, cool.
And they spent a lot of time there too. So when they finally found Dwayne, when the farmer and his dog found Dwayne's remains, they conclusively linked those remains to Dwayne. And Jason was found guilty and sentenced. They're still looking for Robert Aubrey Maxwell. They don't believe they'll ever find him, though. They believe that what happened was that Jason killed him and put him in a dumpster. And that when the dumpster was emptied, it went to the landfill processing. They're like, we just don't think his body's ever going to be found, but it's not like we're going to stop looking.
Yeah. Oh, man.
The detectives in this case, they were just fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
Just really, really good people.
Wow. That was quite a ride.
The whole Jason Stedman thing, he leaves me with I feel like I need a shower. He's like just dirty, creepy, dirty guy. And again, you're like, if you were watching this as a movie, you were like, seriously? Who the fuck wrote this story script?
You're like, okay. Yeah, too much. Too fucking much.
No,
yeah.
This is all fucking real life.
Damn.
I feel like if Jason, all the energy and effort he put into being a complete, total asshat, if he had turned that into something positive, he could have accomplished so much in his life.
Oh, for sure.
But I felt like there was enough of Jason in this story. I didn't want to take away any more from Dwayne or Robert Aubrey Maxwell, the real Robert Aubrey Maxwell.
Yeah, and I'm glad that hopefully his grandmother knows that it wasn't that he just wanted to cut her out.
Yeah.
I mean, not that she would prefer to have a dead grandson, but that he didn't choose to just eliminate her from his life. So,
yeah.
Ugh.
And the detectives kept her up to date. They kept her, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
They really, they get gold stars in my book.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Those are the kinds of detectives, if something were to ever happen to me. Hey, actually, James, if anything ever happens to me, go up to Edmonton, grab Robertson and Billoway, and ask them to investigate my case.
Cool.
They'll do right. Come back for the next episode, y'all.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that one.
Yeah.
And if this is your first time listening, go back and check out our other episodes.
Don't start with episode 1. We've gotten better.
Yeah, we've improved. Go backwards.
Start recent, go back.
And then stay tuned for more.
Mm-hmm. All right. And on that note, bye, James.
Goodbye, Carrie. I don't have anything.
Thank God.
No worries at all.
A photo.
Now that's a Tumblr. Fuck!
No, that's not how we roll.
You dumb motherfucker.
No, I'm over here like,
best of luck to you.
I'm such a bitch.
Oh, hey!
Let me take another drink of the Bourbon Gerb.